How's work treating you?
Oh, it's fine. It gives me a break from all the campaign stuff during the middle of the day, you know? Yeah, wake up every day, there's more interest to count. Thank goodness. How about you?
Running hard, you know, spend about 80% of my time campaigning, the other 20% on my real estate.
A couple, 3 weeks ago, whenever it came running through, with the wind, and it was like a little tropical storm for 15 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm ready.
We're ready. The blue signs one way and then
And we'll back. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Christy Malloyd. I am the Voter Services Chair for the League of Women Voters of Lafayette, and I'm so glad to have you all here with us tonight for our forum for the Lafayette Parish Assessors candidates. So pleased to have both of them here with us this evening. First, I want to tell you just a little bit about the League of Women Voters. The League was established in 1920. We're over 100 years old. And we are, I know, we don't look it, but we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates, nor do we endorse parties. Our purpose is to educate the citizenry about the issues that are facing our community, to help them understand what's on the ballot, and to help them get to know candidates. Our membership is open to both men and women, anyone age 16 and up. Our purpose is really to help people get active and participate. I know you shouldn't have a favorite candidate forum, but this is going to be mine, and that says something about my intellectual interest. For the last 24 years, the Lafayette Parish Assessor Office has been held by Conrad Como, and we wish him a joyous retirement at the end of that period. And both Justin Santani and Walter Campbell have put themselves up for qualification for this office, and we thank you so much for being here tonight. Just a little bit of housekeeping, if everybody could take just a second and check your phones and make sure those are on silent. I'll talk just a little bit about our format this evening. All of the questions we are going to be asking here are new to the candidates. They were not provided any of these ahead of time. The questions are designed to give candidates an opportunity to express their positions on issues that are relevant to our voters. We are going to have our candidates take turns tonight answering the questions. We'll be going back and forth in order, and we are going to proceed by alphabetical by last name. So Mr. Campbell will begin and then proceed to Justin, and then we'll flip that for each question. We're going to ask at the very beginning, each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll take about a minute per question for them to give an answer. With only 2 candidates, we're not on quite such a strict timeline as we might otherwise be, but we do have Miss Deborah Ami right here, our astute timekeeper, and she can give you signals as we go along if you're running a little long. That is it for our housekeeping, and if everybody could just hold their applause throughout. This is not a debate, it's a forum. No cheering, no jeering, none of that kind of stuff. But if we could begin with Mr. Campbell, if you could begin by introducing yourself, and then Justin, we'll take a turn with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Walter Campbell.
Just a little bit about me. I graduated college from USL in 1992 with a business degree using the GI Bill, and I got into information technology for about 10 years. After that, I thankfully found my way into real estate, where I've been for 24 years. I love everything about my profession, and I am a huge property rights advocate. I know we have a lot of property rights questions going on. Maybe that will be one of tonight's questions. Who knows? But I look forward to it. Thank you again for having me.
Justin, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this this forum. I remember in 2014 when I ran for the school board, what an enjoyable experience it was and how helpful it was to help me reach voters and educate people in my district. My name is Justin Santani. I'm running for Lafayette Parish Assessor. For 2 decades, I've been a data analyst for financial institutions and federal defense contractors. I graduated college from Nichols State University with a degree in computer information systems and a minor in math. I came to Lafayette when I was 18 to go to USL and met my wife. And like so many men, here I am all these years later. And I look forward to answering a lot of questions tonight and letting the voters understand exactly what my positions are.
Thank you both so much. For our first question, this one will go to you, Justin, and then back to you, Walter. As far as I can tell, no one grows up thinking, I one day want to be a tax assessor or a property assessor. You know, I spent a lot of time in Sunday school growing up and learned a lesson very early on that the tax man is usually the enemy of the story, not necessarily the hero. And I think part of that is for over 2,000 years, we've had trust issues with people who are evaluating taxes, who are collecting taxes. I say that all as a prelude of tell us what you are going to do to help ensure trust and create a sense of responsibility and accountability with this office. Justin, to you first.
So I have a fundamental principle of property taxes, and it means that we shouldn't tax any property in Lafayette Parish unless it's going to services that increase the value of your property. At that point, the taxes that you pay on your property are an investment in your property and not a cost. And when you're making an investment in your property and you see the services that you receive for those taxes, then you're more willing to say, okay, that's an investment. I see the value that I'm getting. My property is increasing in value. I'm building wealth in my property. I think that's the most important part of the assessor's job.
Thank you, Justin. Walter, to you.
I've been a realtor for 24 years. I sell commercial real estate and residential real estate, and I value property for banks and other third parties. I think it's pretty clear that we base our valuations on sales comparison approach generally. And I don't want to go over anybody's head, but if you live in a neighborhood and 3 houses sell in the last 6 months, and when we look at the valuation of your property, we base that on the sales in your neighborhood. And I want to remove the word tax from the Lafayette Parish Assessor because we aren't an enemy of the people. In fact, I think exactly the opposite. I believe in fair, unbiased transparency in the office. So I want to do more public service announcements speaking about how your taxes are derived. So you can count on that.
Thank you very much. Our next question, Walter, we'll start with you. More and more government services utilize online and remote processes. What role will technology play in your approach to making property assessments efficient and fair?
I love that. So I was in IT, as I'd said, for 10 years, so I understand database management and things like that. There are others that have more recent experience in technology that might be able to add to that, but I think that there is an artificial intelligence component that will help us. I know that the National Association of Realtors uses a tool based on AI to help determine property values, and it's the most accurate tool that I have seen, and it provides all of the comparable data so that people see how it makes sense, how the values are derived.
Thank you. Justin.
So fortunately, I'm one of the people that has more recent experience. So for 20 years now, I've been in information technology, delivering and implementing data systems for financial companies that give end users information that allow their operations or in the company itself to operate more efficiently. And so when technology is done well and when technology is done right, it reduces the cost of operating, it reduces the cost to the taxpayers, and that's how technology is going to play a role in the assessor's office by making us more efficient and reducing cost to operate the office.
Thank you. Justin, on that note, the next question will go to you. Part of the assessor's job is not just doing property assessments, but it's running an office. There are staff, there are a lot of moving pieces to keeping that going. Talk a little bit about any experience you have in your approach to managing a pretty large staff operation.
So I currently manage 27 people for the 38th largest bank in the country. We manage all of the back-end data financial systems, and we have offices and team members in Lafayette, Memphis, Dallas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. So I have extensive experience managing a large team, a complex team that's responsible for complex operations and making sure, the best case scenario for us is if we do our job well, the customers don't know we're there. When we don't do our job well, they do know we're there. And I think the assessor's office is very, very similar. When the assessor does his job well and the team does their job well, then the taxpayers, they don't even know we're there. And so I have a lot of experience of operating in that fashion.
Thank you. Walter, to you.
Not only was I a leader in the military when I served, where I had numerous other airmen. I was in the Air Force in the Air National Guard for Louisiana, where I had others reporting to me. But in my own company, I happen to work for Keller Williams Realty, which happens to be the largest real estate company on the planet. And during my 14 years at Keller Williams, I've served as CEO, I've served as statewide broker, and I've served as regional manager from Houma to Lake Charles, where I had 1,600 realtors that I was responsible for, and we also proved to be the most successful franchise in Louisiana.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. For our next question, switching a little bit more to some policy kinds of questions. Some types of property and some types of taxpayers in Louisiana are subject to special rules. Things like our homestead exemptions. Whenever we vote in the fall, often we have a long list of new exemptions we might be voting for regarding these rules. What role do you anticipate playing in handling property tax exemptions for various groups, such as people with disabilities or veterans or first responders? Walter.
So glad you brought that up. I'm a veteran, I'm a realtor, and I'm a candidate for assessor. And frankly, I never hear about the benefits that are due those parties that we've voted to give those rights to. I speak to seniors all the time. Most recently, speaking during walking door to door, and some of them they didn't even have the homestead exemption on their home, much less the senior freeze. So we got an opportunity to get the word out. So what I plan to do is public service announcements using, I've already talked to my people at Lamar Outdoor. I've talked to some TV stations and radio stations. I would like to do public service announcements where disabled veterans are talking to disabled veterans about their benefits. Seniors are talking to seniors about their benefits. All of those things, including disabled people.
Thank you very much. Justin, same question to you.
So I want to work with our legislators to index the homestead exemption and the property exemption freeze income level to inflation. So the problem I have right now is that we're stuck with $75,000. It's been $75,000 for 30 years, 40 years. It's $100,000 of adjusted gross income in order to qualify for these exemptions. And just 3 years ago, $100,000 was worth a lot more than it is today. And so I think what we need to do is we need to start indexing these value levels for inflation so that the value that they're getting doesn't erode. Having somebody make $100,000 today is not the same as $100,000 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so I want to work with our legislative delegation to make those changes to state law.
Thank you very much, Justin. This next question will go to you. States are exposed to major weather risk, and we're living through it right now, right? We're in a drought, and we're all too familiar with hurricanes and all the rest. We're seeing decreasing numbers of insurers and starkly increasing insurance premiums. Given the importance of home insurance for property values and for sales, how will these trends affect your duties in the years ahead? Justin.
Our families are being squeezed. My homeowner's policy has tripled in the last 2 years. It went up, I thought, a pretty significant amount, and then I didn't even realize what a significant amount was until it went up again the next year.
Yep.
And so I think we have to be mindful and we have to be diligent about how we assess property in this parish, because if we're not careful, we're going to price people out of their home. They're not going to be able to afford the taxes. They're not going to be able to afford to buy a home. It's getting a little dicey already just because my mortgage payment went up $500 a month just in the last 3 years. And that is something that I was unable to plan for because my insurance company went out of business, and it was something that we had to swallow just on the spot. And so it impacted my savings, it impacts the wealth that I'm building in my home, and we have to be very mindful of that.
Thank you, Justin. Walter, same question to you.
You know, in 24 years of real estate, this is the first time that insurance has played such a pivotal role on whether somebody can afford a home or not. In the past, it's been interest rates, most recently. Before then, it was flood insurance, but now homeowners insurance is the big impact. And so what I'd like to do is work with our local delegation to work with our legislators. I know that Congressman Clay Higgins is putting something forth to the legislature to help with that. And of course, I think Tim Temple's the sole person running for insurance commissioner. We have got to get with him and help create programs, because eventually it is going to cost adjustments in property values down if they keep if the insurance rates are continuing to be this high.
Thank you. It's a nice segue into the next question, Walter. Right, the Lafayette Parish Assessor is focused on the parish of Lafayette, but in many ways you need to have relationships with other state offices, with the state legislature, even with our federal government. So could you talk a little bit about your approach to building those relationships, even with other property assessors across the state? Walter, to you.
So we have a 14-month gap between the time that one of us is elected and we take office. God willing and voter willing, you elect me, and I intend to, in fact, I've already started it. I have been a person in real estate, and I intend to do the same thing as assessor, that learns from best practices. I do not want to be the inventor of any wheels. I want to go to the inventor of the wheels and say, how's it working for your parish? Tell me more. How can I learn about it? I've already begun that by talking to some of our parish assessors in Acadiana, because I think that that's the way to go. In fact, it's hard to believe to me, but Acadia Parish is ahead of us. And that's not just according to Jimbo Pettijohn. I'm talking about the assessor's office specifically. If you go to their assessor website, it's amazing. It offers a lot of features that ours doesn't. In fact, if you go to Iberia, there are lots of features on the website that ours doesn't. So my intention is to focus my vision on best practices.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. One of the Lafayette Parish Assessor is very much focused on the parish of Lafayette, but to do that, you also need to build relationships with the state legislature, with other offices. Could you talk about your approach to building those kinds of relationships?
Oh, certainly. So in my time on the school board, it's a parish-wide body, and we have formed relationships, working relationships with every municipal police department, the sheriff's office, every municipality in the parish, because we service their citizens and their children in education. The police departments provide school resource officers, for which we pay half. So I have experience already developing working relationships with other offices to achieve a shared goal and make sure that we're delivering services for our constituents and giving them what they need and when they need it.
Thank you. Justin, this next question will go to you first. Payment in lieu of taxes, otherwise known as pilot programs, allow select nonprofit institutions and corporations to make voluntary payments to local government in lieu of traditional property taxes. How do you assess the effects of pilot programs on tax revenues and the fairness of the overall tax system?
So I am inclined to be against pilots without a good reason. And they need to be really good. And the way, I can just only tell you because we don't have any specifics that we're judging on this particular question. Mm-hmm. The only way to judge anything like that is the return on investment. And I think where the pilots fall apart is that up front, it looks really good. We're gonna build a street, we're gonna improve this property, and in exchange for doing that, we're not gonna pay property taxes. When you don't pay property taxes, it's not just to the city of Lafayette or the parish of Lafayette, it's also to the sheriff, to the school system, it's also to whatever municipality it's in, it's also to the assessor himself. And so I don't know that we get the value, and I go back to services, taxing property for services that increase its value. That's how we have to make decisions on any kind of property tax, because I don't think pilots necessarily give us the value for the taxes that they're not paying.
Thank you.
Louisiana is one of many states that has economic development tools at their disposal. Pilots and TIFs are a couple of those. The pilot program and the tax increment financing is the TIF. And it is, that's where transparency becomes vital. And maybe some of these things may need to go to the vote of the people. I'll tell you that there are some areas of Lafayette Parish that if they hadn't had a TIF or a pilot, they wouldn't have grown and drawn more economic development to the areas. I mean, that's clear at the Target on the north side of town. Yes, if you choose to go to that shopping center, you pay an extra cent. But there are lots of those, and it must be, I'll agree, it must be very clear and transparent what the benefit is to the parish.
Thank you. Our next question, I will freely say, is a pretty technical one if you are not deep into this kind of policy stuff. But I want to ask you all about rolling millages forward. I first want to take a second just to help explain what that means. In Louisiana, we pay our property taxes through millages, and as property values fluctuate, they go up, they go down. Our governing authority here in Lafayette, it's our parish and city council, can have some flexibility to move millage rates in response to those fluctuations. According to Louisiana law, if your property value goes up, by default, the council has to basically keep the amount of taxes that they're collecting the same. But with a majority vote, a 2/3 vote, they can choose to roll the millage forward, meaning they can actually collect more based on these increases in property values. The previous assessor, Mr. Conrad Como, was very involved in lots of budget discussions, and often was found at council meetings saying part of the issue with Lafayette's budget situation, especially on the parish side, is that the councils have consistently chosen not to roll millages forward, thus choosing not to collect additional taxes when they otherwise could have. All that's prelude. I promise I'm getting to a question. Do you agree with that assessment, forgive the pun, that part of the issue that Lafayette's budgets have faced is that we've missed opportunities to roll these millages forward? Or do you have a different take on that? And Walter, I'm going to start with you on that.
I'm going to be honest with you that I have studied some on this. However, I believe that the assessor's role in that is to, there's a lot of education that I expect to learn during the 14-month gap. But this is an area that I think is really important, and I know that our current assessor has been charged with wanting to roll them forward, but I don't really understand, as long as the budget is achieved, why we would need to roll it forward and collect more money than we would otherwise need to. So on the face of it, I'm afraid I'm not in favor of it, but I would need to learn more about it.
Thank you for that response.
Of course.
Justin?
Sure. So I think each legislative body in the parish and each city council, the school board, they all face challenges with increasing costs. I mean, you know, here in our private lives, a dozen eggs costs more than it did 2 years ago. It costs more for gas. It costs more for home insurance, just like we just covered. It's no different when you're running a large organization. And so I think the reason they might consider rolling it forward is that paying for the same services that they paid for this year in the next year is going to cost more. When we're fortunate in Lafayette Parish to have, and I'll just make a slight correction, it's not your property values that go up, It's the net property values in the entire parish. When those increase, then the taxing authority has to roll back their millage rate to only collect what they collected the year before. So I think it's up to those bodies to make sure that they're still able to deliver the services that their constituents need, that their constituents want, that their constituents are charging them to provide. They're able to make that decision, and the assessor is there to simply advise on what their long-term tax policy and tax structure is going to do to their revenue.
Thank you. Part of what an assessor can do is help explain exactly these kinds of really complicated issues that your average citizen probably doesn't spend a ton of time thinking about. So what are your strategies to help take these very complicated things and break them down in a way that is accessible for your average Lafayette Parish resident?
So after they wake up from going to sleep when I start talking about this, no, it is very dry, it's very dorky, and it's very complex. There's no doubt about that. But I think I have a natural ability to make, I love math, I do. And I have a natural ability to explain complex math topics in very easy to understand language, such that my son, I explained property tax rolling villages forward to him a few months ago. And he seemed to get it. Now, I don't know if that means he's really smart or I'm really good, but I think it is incredibly important to make sure that everyone understands the issues facing our legislative bodies, facing our parish, so that we can all make informed decisions on how we move forward together.
Thank you.
I think for the audiences that want to learn more about it, that there are wonderful things like YouTube and other things where I have taken classes from Conrad Como. And
Me too. He was great at it.
yeah, he did a good job. And he brought in materials so that those of us who wanted to know about it could learn about it. To have everybody know about how these things are calculated and things like that, I think a lot of people don't even want to know. They just want to pay their bill. They just want to pay their bill. And but for the ones that do want to know, I think that it can be done in a very elementary way. I know on the current assessor's website, there's a tax estimator that if you know how to plug in the right information, that it will tell you about what your taxes are going to be. And I like that. I think that that's a great tool.
Thank you very much. Up next, I want to talk ask a little bit about some of the differences that we see in property values, even within neighborhoods. Sometimes we have long-term residents and recent purchasers who are assessed at different levels of tax, right? If I've bought my house recently, my assessed level and the amount of property taxes I'm paying might be quite a bit higher than a neighbor who's lived there a long time. They might be paying a lot less. If you could talk a little bit about your approach to thinking about that, and is that fair? Is that fiscally sustainable? What do you think? Walter, to you.
I have seen firsthand of or misvaluations from an assessment standpoint. I mean, grievous. I was really surprised. And I've heard of overvaluations from an assessment standpoint as well. And what I would like to do is utilize the services of certified appraisers in the office, not as employees, but to come in and teach the assessor staff the proper methods of valuation. Because I do find, in fact, people have complained to me that they, believe it or not, that their assessments were too low. Because they went to the bank to get a home equity line of credit, and the bank looks at the assessor's website to see what the valuation is, and it's what they bought it for. This is a house in Bendel that they bought it for, that they made improvements in, but yet the assessment had remained the same. So that's what I would like to do. I would like to get some assistance from certified appraisers to help the staff understand valuation properly.
Thank you. Justin?
I got to tell you, I've never heard of anybody complaining that their assessment was too low. I got to tell you that. No, my philosophy is, I think the place we need to be on assessed value is somewhere between 70 and 80% of appraised value. And I'll tell you why. Because the top of the real estate market is constantly churning. It increases, it decreases. But that 70 to 80% level is sort of immune to those. And the reason we want to be immune to the ups and downs when we talk about assessed values is not only does that provide certainty to our taxpayers, when the year starts, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what you're going to owe in property taxes. It provides certainty to our taxing authorities. City of Lafayette's going to have a pretty good idea of what they're going to collect in property taxes so that they know how to hire enough policemen, firemen, road projects, things of that nature. And finally, I think it provides certainty to our businesses, which uncertainty for a business is kryptonite. And so the more certainty that we can provide for the taxpayers, the taxing authorities, and our businesses in Lafayette Parish, the better off we'll be.
Thank you. For our next question, could you talk a little bit about what you see as the pros and cons of updating property assessments to reflect exactly those kinds of trends in the market values? Even the past, I would say 7 years, I've seen pretty big fluctuations. How do you think about that as assessor?
So the way I understand it works now is when you purchase a property, the assessor assesses it at the purchase price. There's no better indicator of market value than what you paid for it, right? And so over time, though, you don't necessarily get reassessed immediately. And more properties get sold and those properties get updated. And so you end up with a blend of property values in a certain area. And state law says there can't be too much difference between the low end and the high end. And so those properties have to be reassessed. And you want to make sure that you don't let it get out of control, quite frankly, because what we're seeing in home prices and sale prices today, I think could really, really challenge the further development of Lafayette Parish.
Thank you.
As a realtor, I check the market, I evaluate the market regularly. And you know, Lafayette and Louisiana, we're lagging states from a real estate perspective. You could actually go back historically, and we appreciate in value about 4% every year. And during 20 and 21, it jumped from 4% up to 8 and 12%. It was amazing. I'm glad I didn't buy a house in 20 and try to sell it in 23. But the point is, in 22 and 23, it is in the adjusting process again. You'll see that houses are taking longer to sell. They're selling for less, and it's getting us back on that track. So I just, we have statistics that show where values have been and where values are headed. You are going to have, every now and then, you are going to have an anomaly like what happened in 20 and 21.
Thank you. For our next question, and Walter, you somewhat already anticipated that this might be one of the ones. We have a lot of conversations going on in Lafayette about short-term rentals. And we have folks who are looking to invest in properties, who want to turn that into a full-time short-term rental. We also have folks who want to take their house, they want to get out of town for Mardi Gras, they want to go on a ski vacation, they just want to be able to rent it out for a week or two. As a property assessor, how do you think about short-term rentals and property values and what that means for the way that we are building out our neighborhoods and communities?
Zoning aside, I think short-term rentals we have about 700 short-term rentals in Lafayette that you know are short-term rentals. They're on either Airbnb or VRBO. And then there are probably lots of them that you don't hear about, right? But the point is, and again, zoning aside, they're running a business. That's not a residence, and it's not a long-term rental. So depending on how the city parish council votes, which I'm glad I'm not a city parish council person, I think that the Pandora's box is open. So there's going to be a lawsuit if you ban it. There's going to be a lawsuit if you don't ban it. But I think if they don't ban it and it's regulated, part of that will have a taxing authority associated with it because they are, again, running a business. I don't care what they pay Airbnb or VRBO. I want to know what they're going to be paying Lafayette Parish.
Thank you. Justin, to you.
So I have a unique perspective on this because the I guess, epicenter of the short-term rental issue is on my block. It's across the street from my house. So I've managed to think a lot about this, a lot about this issue. I think it comes down to an issue of fairness, quite frankly. You know, because as Walter said, the short-term rental operators are running a commercial enterprise in a residential neighborhood. And I don't think we can put zoning aside because zoning exists. and zoning exists for a reason. And this is why we have HOAs to be more restrictive than some zoning laws. In my neighborhood, we don't have an HOA. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But I think at the root of it all, it's an issue of fairness. And not many people know this. Commercial property gets taxed at higher rates than residential property. And currently, my understanding is short-term rentals are not taxed at commercial rates.
They're not.
It's not as simple as saying flip a switch and we're gonna tax short-term rentals at commercial rates, because that also wouldn't be fair, because it's not always used as a short-term rental. Sometimes it's used as a residence. And so there's got to be some middle ground there that is fair and respects zoning, neighborhoods, and what we want our family life in Lafayette to be.
Thank you. The position of assessor is a pretty big role. In fact, many people would think of it as a full-time job, and both of you have talked about your current full-time jobs that you are in. How are you thinking about what that's going to look like if you are elected, and how you will approach the position of assessor vis-a-vis other work?
I'm trying to figure out how to keep my current job for 14 months after I get elected, because no, it is a full-time job. I can't imagine Walter's going to attempt to do anything other than this, because it's so fundamental and critically important to the functioning of government at all levels in Lafayette Parish that we deserve and we need a full-time assessor. And it takes an incredibly large staff to run that office. It takes someone's full-time diligence and concentration to make sure that the tax rolls are prepared on time, values are calculated accurately. Because if the assessor doesn't do that, then policemen can't get paid, firemen can't get paid, teachers can't get paid, roads don't get paved. It impacts everyone's life in Lafayette Parish. So I agree with you. It is a fundamentally critical role within Lafayette Parish that we don't necessarily see all the time.
Thank you. Walter, to you.
They'll have to pry the real estate license out of my cold, dead fingers. But of course, my role in real estate will certainly change. In fact, we were talking a little bit about that before. My brokerage has it's a secondary brokerage for people that aren't practicing but like to refer business to others. But I love the profession that I'm in. I just won't do it at the same level, because I am in agreement that the residents of Lafayette Parish deserve a full-time assessor. They don't, a lot of them, I talk to them and they don't realize the importance of the assessor. The taxes that are based on the assessments, they will, like Justin said, they'll make or break a business sometimes. And they'll cause people, especially seniors, to be forced to sell their homes because so it's a very critical role, very critical role.
Thank you. We're going to let both of these candidates off of the hook. That is the end of our official questions. I know, you guys are good.
18 minutes.
I mean, you could go to a minute and a half on these answers. We could have talked all night.
I know, and you would have, but we had to bring you in for that very reason. I'm going to let you both take a minute, and if you have any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to offer, we welcome that. And,
After me. Thank you,
Justin,
Walter.
to you.
Look, I'm just excited that we have a group of people who want to talk about the ins and outs of the tax assessor's office, because Walter will tell you it doesn't happen often. It's exciting. I think it's a critical job. It's a fundamentally important job in Lafayette Parish, and I'm excited to try to do it. You know, the tax assessor needs to be, as we mentioned before, a tax policy expert. The tax assessor needs to be someone who is a technology expert. The tax assessor needs to be someone who is fair and transparent. And the tax assessor needs to be humble enough to admit when he's got it wrong, so that the taxpayers can come to the assessor and sit with him and come to reasonable conclusions about why their assessment is incorrect. And the assessor has to be humble enough to admit that. So I think with my 2 terms on the school board, with my professional experience managing large amounts of financial data for financial institutions, with my implementation of LafayetteCheckbook.com for the school system, where you can see where every dime is being spent, and my dedication in public service, then I would ask for your vote on October 14th, because I am just the nerd for the job. I'm up.
Thank you, Justin. And Walter, to you.
I've been discussing my interest in being the next assessor with Conrad Como for the last 15 years. It's been something that I have been interested in. It's not a stepping stone for me. I have spent years learning my trade of real estate and valuation. Like I said earlier, I value for banks. I value for other third parties that sell third party, like repo businesses, repo houses and so forth. And I want to also mention, and I'm proud of this, I've been a Republican since I turned 18, and I'm the only candidate in our race that is endorsed by the Republican Party. And I believe it's because I've shown them that I am a conservative, a fiscally minded business owner, and I'd like to do that same thing for the Parish of Lafayette. So thank you.
Thank you both. I want to thank everyone in our audience here this evening. I really appreciate everybody being here, and for everyone who is watching for our live stream or watching this recording, thank you for taking the time to be educated, to get to know these candidates, what they stand for, and learn a little bit more about even what the assessor's office does. I definitely want to thank many of the people here, not only our candidates, but our timekeeper, Mrs. Deborah, the South Regional Library for this wonderful facility and for helping us get this set up, and especially for AOC Community Media for doing the hard work of getting all of our videography set up. Our next election is on Saturday, October 14th. Just a reminder, that is during the middle of festivals Acadian and Creole. So there are lots of opportunities to early vote as well. We have 3 early voting stations downtown, the parish government building. We also have opportunities at the Martin Luther King Rec Center and at the East Regional Library. So you can early vote between September 30th and October 7th. I'll make one last plug for the League of Women Voters. In addition to these forums, we also have a voter guide that will be available through vote411.org, as well as 7 more of these candidate forums over the next 6 weeks. You can follow us. We are in deep helping people get educated. But you were number one, and that was intentional. You can follow us on our Facebook page for the League of Women Voters of Lafayette to follow more of that schedule and learn more. And last but definitely not least, could we please give a big round of applause for our wonderful candidates this evening.
Thank you. And thank you for
all.
moderating.
Thank you.
First, got a quick question. I realize we're finished. It's been a reference to 14 months between the time of being elected and taking office. Could we have a better explanation of that?
Sure. So many years ago, the assessors, the clerks of courts, and the sheriffs,
1974.
they were all elected in the spring election following the governor's election. At some point in time, the 3 offices were moved back to the fall election with the governor and the state legislatures. At that point in time, the sheriffs and the clerks of court, they took office on July 1st, which they still do. The assessors would take office on January 1st to allow them to finish the reassessment, which occurs in the year after the governor's election. So since you can't shorten anybody's term when you change election dates like that, the assessor went from 8 months to 14 months by moving the election back.
Thank you, Bruce. That was an excellent clarifying question, and thank you for the
The
explanation.
Constitution, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So you'll be elected and begin supposedly January 1st, 2024, but actually it'll be January 1st, 2020.
The 4th year of his term is the reassessment year, and he has to complete that reassessment before the next assessor takes office.
I assure you, you don't want to change assessors in the middle of a reassessment year. I promise you that.
And I don't know, do I want to be the assessor after he does his reassessment year?
Well, both of us are anticipating getting a lot of emails between the election and when we take office, saying and responding to them by saying, we're not the assessor.
Not yet. Excellent. Thank you both.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Good job.
You too.